Later this month, students will go back to school across the country. But the start of this school year looks a little bit different as the Trump administration continues their all out attack on education. Don't believe me? Here's Linda McMahon saying the quiet part out loud.
We're certainly making great strides in that. We've reduced the folks over at the Department of Education by about 50% now through our RIF program, and so we've closed a lot of the district offices, consolidated, so there are a lot fewer people working a lot more efficiently in the Department of Education.
So today, we're unpacking how Donald Trump is trying to dismantle the foundation of our educational system piece by piece. I'm Hannah Moldavan, Deputy Communications Director for the Democrats, and your host for today. It's Friday, August 1st, and this is the Democrats' Daily Blueprint. So far this year, Trump and Republicans have been a disaster on education policies. Schools have had to deal with the uncertainty over federal funding, from colleges who are being sued by the Trump administration, to Trump's freezing of federal funds for everything from after-school programs to critical teacher training for tens of thousands of schools across the United States. And thanks to Trump's trade war, prices for basic school supplies like pencils and backpacks are higher than they ever have been before. And today, a federal student loan program created under President Biden to dramatically lower monthly student debt payments and provide a path to loan forgiveness was allowed to expire by Trump. As a result of this, some student loan bills could double. To talk about what all of this means, we're thrilled to have a special guest on the Daily Blueprint, former Education Secretary Miguel Cardona. Secretary Cardona, thank you so much for being here today.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I think it's really important work you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Secretary, today, millions of Americans who enrolled in President Biden's SAVE Act program will start to see interest accrue on their loans. And in less than 3 years, the program will cease to exist. Can you explain the positive impacts of the SAVE Act and what are some of the dangers of getting rid of it?
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, let's go back a little bit to find out why did we fight for the SAVE program. The SAVE program was intended to address the fact that back then, over 1 million people were going into default every year. So in order to get people to successfully repay their loans, we created the SAVE plan. And what that did was, in essence, lower the percentage of their disposable income that had to go to loans. We know prices have gone up. People can pay less, unfortunately, in order to make ends meet. So what you're going to find now is that people are just going to go into default, and that's going to ruin their history, their credit history, and their credit, and also make it less likely that these loans ever get paid off at all. So we were trying to get people to be successful in paying off their loans. Two things: the percentage of disposable income went from 10% to 5%. And then the other thing is it went after this interest that just inflated, right? So we wanted to cap that so that people are not paying just interest for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and that did a lot for people. I know I personally have myself and friends who have really benefited from that. And today is the day that that is stopping because of the Trump administration. You know, Trump and Republicans are also hell-bent on this idea of shutting down the Department of Education. This is the one that you just came off of leading. They've already taken first steps to make this a reality. I think Linda McMahon said that 50% of the people that worked at the Department of Education are now gone. You know, beyond you having worked with a lot of these people, why does it matter? Why does the Department of Education and the existence of it matter?
Yeah, first of all, these are hardworking civil servants who could have gone into the private sector to make a lot more money, but they chose public service, and they were, just thrown out regardless of their skill set, really disrespectfully. So what my message there is, the Department of Education is first and foremost a civil rights agency. It protected the rights of students across the country, the 50 million students in our schools. So what you're doing in essence is taking away those safeguards that protect students with disabilities, ensure that students that are receiving Title I dollars, the 26 million students across the country that benefit from that, get what Congress intended. I was a state commissioner. Unlike this Secretary of Education, unlike the previous secretaries of education, I was also a state commissioner. I knew what role the State Department of Education had and what role the federal government had. It's nonsense to say we're giving it back to the states. When I was Commissioner of Education, I had the control. What I needed, though, is to ensure that I had the support from the federal government to utilize the dollars the way they were intended. What you're going to find is that states are now going to be scrambling to figure out how to disperse dollars that the federal government did. And it's not going to be done equitably. And there's no oversight at the federal level because they're getting rid of everyone to make sure that in places where kids can't read, the money's not being used to create fancy, shiny football fields. So all kids are going to be impacted, but the kids furthest from opportunity are going to be impacted the most and most quickly.
You know, one of the other things that we're focused on here at the DNC is organizing everywhere, but also organizing and making sure people are running for positions, not just at the level of Congress or maybe Senate or governor, which we're familiar with, but all the way down to school board races, participating in our democracy. You know, you just mentioned you've held some of those positions, unlike our current Secretary of Education, but what would you say to people about getting involved now, running for local positions, especially those having to do with schools?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I think, for those who are listening, um, decisions are made at the local level. Curriculum decisions are made at the local level. Policy decisions are made at the local level. So I would say, I would encourage folks to seek local office, help your community, stay true to your values. We need people right now that stand on principle, that can work with everyone. It really shouldn't be red or blue. This is really about kids in this case. So we need people to stand up on behalf of students across our country and run for the local board of education and run for city council, run for mayor, support state leaders and run for those positions to make sure that public education is still a good. It is the great equalizer. It was for me. I came from a community that was 85% free and reduced lunch. And it was because of my local public elementary school that I had teachers that believed in me, even more than I believed in myself at the time. And that allowed me to serve the President of the United States. So it's possible through public education. All politics is local. Get involved.
Secretary Cardona, thank you so much for coming on today's Daily Blueprint, for all of your years of civil servant. We really appreciate it. Mr. Cardona, thank you so much for joining us for today's Daily Blueprint. We'll be right here with you on Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern on the DNC's YouTube page.